What if I told you that my own daughter stole my deceased husband's wedding ring to pay for her luxury vacation to Bali? But when the jeweler called me about a hidden compartment inside the ring, I discovered my husband had been secretly protecting me from her for years. What if I told you that my late husband Bill had hidden over $2 million from me our entire marriage, not to deceive me, but because he knew his own daughter was planning to have me declared mentally incompetent to steal my inheritance? And what if I told you that the wedding ring she thought would get her a few $1,000s actually contained the key to evidence that would destroy her life and send her to federal prison? If you're watching this, subscribe and let me know where you're watching from, because this story will show you that sometimes the people closest to you are the ones you need protection from the most. My name is Eleanor Mitchell, and this is the story of how my daughter's greed became her downfall, and how my husband continued protecting me even from beyond the grave. It's already gone, Mom. Deal with it. Those were the words that shattered my world on a rainy Tuesday morning in Portland. My daughter Rebecca stood in my kitchen, arms crossed, looking at me like I was the unreasonable one. I stared at her, my coffee mug trembling in my hands, still processing what she'd just told me. "You sold your father's wedding ring without asking me?" Rebecca rolled her eyes. "Mom, seriously, you need to move on. It's been 8 months since Dad died. Keeping his jewelry in a box isn't healthy. 8 months since I buried my husband of 38 years, and my own daughter had stolen the one piece of him I kept closest to my heart. Bill's wedding ring had been in my jewelry box since the hospital gave it to me along with his other belongings. I'd held it every morning, running my fingers over the inscription we'd chosen together. Forever and always, E+B, 1985. I needed that money for our trip to Bali," Rebecca continued, examining her freshly manicured nails. "Travis has been working so hard lately, and we deserve this vacation." Travis, my son-in-law, looked up from his phone just long enough to nod in agreement. They'd been planning this luxury trip for months, posting about it constantly on social media, showing off resort pictures and first-class flight screenshots. Meanwhile, I'd been clipping coupons and buying generic groceries, just like Bill and I had done our entire marriage. "Which jewelry store?" I asked quietly. "Heritage Jewelry and Antiques on Hawthorne," Rebecca said, checking her Apple Watch. The same expensive watch she'd bought herself last month while I was still figuring out how to pay for Bill's final medical bills. They gave me $1,200. Not bad for an old ring that was just sitting there collecting dust. $1,200 for the white gold band Bill had saved for 3 months to buy when we got engaged. The ring he'd worn every single day of our marriage, except the day he died, when the doctors handed it to me in a small plastic bag along with his wallet and house keys. "That ring meant everything to your father," I said, my voice barely steady. Travis finally looked up from his phone. "Eleanor, come on. It's not like Dad was using it anymore." His casual cruelty hit me like a physical blow. This was the man my daughter had chosen, the man she defended when he made jokes about putting me in a home during family dinners. "We leave for Bali tomorrow morning," Rebecca announced, already heading for the door. "Travis surprised me with an upgrade to first class. This trip is going to be incredible." I watched my daughter gather her designer purse and head toward the door, not a trace of guilt on her face. "Rebecca," I called after her, "that ring wasn't yours to sell." She paused at the doorway, and for a moment I thought I saw a flicker of the little girl I'd raised. Then Travis put his hand on her shoulder, and the moment passed. "Mom, Dad would want us to be happy. He wouldn't want you hoarding his old jewelry like some kind of shrine." She looked around my kitchen, taking in the photos of Bill and me that still covered the refrigerator, the coffee mug he'd used every morning still sitting in the dish rack. "Maybe it's time you started thinking about downsizing anyway. This house is too big for one person." The door closed behind them, leaving me alone with the bitter taste of betrayal and the silence that had become my constant companion since Bill died. But what Rebecca didn't know about her pathetic old mother was that I'd spent 30 years as a financial advisor before retiring. I knew the difference between giving up and strategic planning, and I was done giving up. The thing about betrayal is that it clarifies everything. Standing in my empty kitchen, staring at the space where my husband's wedding ring should have been, I realized that grief had made me passive. I'd been so focused on missing Bill that I'd forgotten how to fight for what mattered. But Bill had taught me to be stronger than that. And tomorrow, while Rebecca and Travis were sipping champagne on their way to Bali, I was going to start getting answers. Heritage Jewelry and Antiques sat nestled between a vintage bookstore and a coffee shop in Portland's Hawthorne district. The morning drizzle had stopped, but gray clouds still hung low over the city as I pushed through the heavy glass door. Inside, the shop smelled of old wood and metal polish, display cases filled with estate jewelry, catching what little light filtered through the windows. The man behind the counter looked up as I entered. He was middle-aged with kind eyes and calloused hands that spoke of years working with delicate metals and precious stones. His name tag read, Nathan Harper, owner. "You must be Mrs. Mitchell," he said before I could introduce myself. "I've been expecting you." "How did you know?" Nathan's expression grew sympathetic. "Your daughter mentioned you might come by. She said you were having trouble letting go." He paused, studying my face. "I have to tell you, ma'am, I feel terrible about the whole situation. When someone brings in a wedding ring, especially one that clearly meant something, I usually ask more questions." "It's sold already?" My heart sank. "I'm afraid so. A collector came in yesterday morning, paid cash. He seemed to know exactly what he was looking for." Nathan rubbed his beard thoughtfully. "But here's the thing, Mrs. Mitchell. When I was cleaning the ring for sale, I found something unusual." He disappeared into the back room and returned with a small white envelope. There was a hidden compartment inside the band. Professional work had to have been done by a master jeweler. I found this inside. My hands shook as I opened the envelope. Inside was a folded piece of paper in Bill's precise handwriting. Ellie's graduation day, June 12th, 1983, the day I knew she was the one. Below that, a series of numbers and letters. CM9821HA0612EM. I stared at the code, my mind racing. Bill had never mentioned any hidden compartment in his wedding ring. In 38 years of marriage, he'd kept this secret, carried it on his finger every single day. "Do you recognize those numbers?" Nathan asked gently. I shook my head, but something about them felt familiar. Bill had always been methodical about record keeping, always writing down important information in that same careful script. "The man who bought the ring," I said suddenly. "What did he look like?" Nathan's expression shifted, became more cautious. "Why do you ask?" "Because my husband hid this for a reason, and I think whoever bought that ring might know more than they're letting on." Nathan was quiet for a long moment, then sighed. He was well dressed, maybe 60 years old. Said he collected vintage wedding bands. But when I mentioned we'd found something inside, he got very interested, asked if we'd read what was on the paper. A chill ran down my spine. Someone had been specifically looking for Bill's ring, and they knew about the hidden compartment. "Did he give you a name?" "Paid cash. No paperwork required for purchases under $2,000. Nathan paused. But he did ask specifically about rings that had come in recently. Said he was looking for pieces with sentimental modifications. Someone had been watching, waiting for Bill's ring to surface. But how did they know about the hidden compartment? And why were they interested in whatever message Bill had left me? I thanked Nathan and walked back to my car, the piece of paper burning in my purse like a secret I wasn't sure I wanted to uncover. Bill had hidden this for nearly 40 years, carried it with him every day of our marriage. What else had my husband been keeping from me? That evening, I sat at Bill's desk in our bedroom, surrounded by decades of financial records. Bill had kept everything: bank statements, tax returns, investment documents, all filed away with his characteristic precision. The code from the ring stared up at me. CM9821HA0 612EM. I'd been through every account we owned, every investment, every safety deposit box. Nothing matched those numbers. Bill had been financially conservative our entire marriage. Savings account, checking account, modest retirement fund. Nothing fancy, nothing hidden. Or so I'd thought. My phone rang, interrupting my search. Rebecca's name flashed on the screen, calling from somewhere over the Pacific Ocean. "Mom, the flight attendant said they have Wi-Fi. How are you doing?" The casual tone in her voice, as if she hadn't just stolen her father's wedding ring, made my chest tighten with anger. "I went to Heritage Jewelry today," I said. Silence on the other end. Then, "And someone else already bought your father's ring. See? Problem solved. Time to move on." Her voice carried that dismissive tone I'd grown to hate over the past 8 months. "Rebecca, there was something hidden inside the ring. Your father left me a message." Another pause. Longer this time. "What kind of message?" Something in her tone made me hesitate. This was the first time Rebecca had shown any interest in anything related to her father since the funeral. "Just some numbers," I said carefully. "Probably an old account number or something." "Mom," Rebecca's voice changed, became more alert. "What exactly did the message say?" The question sent a warning signal through my brain. Yesterday, Rebecca had called her father's ring worthless sentiment. Today, she was suddenly very interested in whatever he'd hidden inside it. "I'm still trying to figure it out," I lied. "It's probably nothing important." "Maybe I should cut the trip short. Come home and help you." "No," I said quickly. "Enjoy your vacation. I can handle this myself." After I hung up, I stared at the phone. Rebecca's sudden concern felt wrong, calculated. Why would she care about a message from the father whose memory she'd been so eager to dismiss? Unless she already knew there was something valuable hidden in that ring. I couldn't sleep that night. Rebecca's sudden interest in Bill's message replayed in my mind, along with the uncomfortable realization that someone had been specifically hunting for his ring. By 3 a.m., I was back at Bill's desk, approaching the code from a different angle. Instead of looking for matching account numbers, I started looking for patterns. Bill had been an engineer before retirement. He thought in systems, in logical sequences. CM could stand for Cayman Management. The numbers 9821 nagged at me until I realized they were our house number reversed, 1289 Hawthorne Street. HA could be Hawthorne Avenue. June 12th, our wedding anniversary. EM was simple. Eleanor Mitchell. My initials. The code included our anniversary and my initials. Bill had made sure only I could decode it. I opened my laptop and searched for Cayman financial institutions. After an hour of research, I found Cayman Management Trust Services, a discreet offshore firm specializing in asset protection for high-net-worth clients. Their login portal required a client identification number and password. With trembling fingers, I typed CM9821 into the client field. "Valid account detected" appeared on screen. For the password, I tried combinations of our anniversary and the day we met. Nothing worked. Then I remembered the note from the ring. Ellie's graduation day, June 12th, 1983. The day I knew she was the one. We'd met at my college graduation party. Bill always said he knew that night he'd marry me someday. I typed in 061283. Access granted. The screen that loaded made me gasp and nearly drop the laptop. Current account balance, $2,847,000. $293. I stared at the numbers until they burned into my vision. Bill had hidden nearly $3 million from me for our entire marriage. Every time I'd worried about retirement, every argument we'd had about money, every coupon I'd clipped while he supposedly managed our tight budget, all while he had millions sitting in an offshore account. My first reaction was fury. How could he lie to me for 38 years? But then I clicked on the account history, and the anger transformed into something else entirely. The first deposit was made in 1987, 2 years after we married. $15,000, with the notation, Initial Inheritance Protection, WM. WM. William Mitchell. Bill's inheritance from his father, who died the year before Rebecca was born. I scrolled through decades of deposits. Unlike the gambling scenario I'd imagined, these were careful, methodical contributions. Bill had been systematically protecting and growing his father's inheritance, reinvesting dividends and adding small amounts from his engineering salary. But the deposits changed dramatically in recent years. Starting in 2019, instead of small monthly contributions, Bill had been making large deposits. $25,000, $50,000, sometimes more. The notations made my blood run cold. Emergency liquidation, Portland property, asset protection, Beaverton rental, defensive transfer, Gresham duplex. Bill had been secretly buying and selling real estate all over Portland, using money I didn't know existed. But why the sudden acceleration? Why had he been converting everything to cash in the final years of his life? I clicked on account messages and found a folder labeled, for Eleanor, Emergency Access Only. Inside was a video file, uploaded just 2 months before Bill's heart attack. I hesitated before pressing play. Whatever Bill had to say about this fortune, I wasn't sure I was ready to hear it. But sitting alone in our bedroom at 4 a.m., staring at numbers that represented more money than I'd ever dreamed of, I needed answers. Bill's familiar face filled the screen. He looked tired, older than I remembered, and was sitting in his home office with the door closed. Ellie, if you're watching this, I'm gone, and something's gone very wrong. His voice was steady but sad. I hoped you'd never need to find this account, that we'd grow old together, and I'd tell you about it when we were safely in our 80s. He paused, running his hand through his thinning hair, in the gesture I'd seen 1,000 times when he was working through a difficult problem. The money started as my father's inheritance, but it became something else. Protection money, insurance against a threat I hoped would never materialize. Bill looked directly into the camera. Ellie, our daughter has been planning to steal from us for over 2 years. The words hit me like a physical blow. I reached for the laptop, fumbling to pause the video, but Bill's voice continued. I hired a private investigator 18 months ago when I found credit card statements Rebecca had accidentally left in our kitchen. She owes over $200,000 to various lenders and has been using fraudulent information about her income to secure loans. But that's not the worst part. Bill's expression grew darker. She's been researching how to have you declared mentally incompetent. I found browser history on her laptop when she asked me to fix it last Christmas. Searches about elder abuse laws, power of attorney procedures, nursing home costs. She's been planning this, Ellie. I felt the room spin around me. My own daughter had been researching how to steal my independence, my home, my life savings. While I'd been grieving Bill's death, she'd been calculating how to profit from my vulnerability. Every property I've bought and sold, every dollar I've moved to this account, it's all been to protect you from Rebecca. She thinks there's maybe $50,000 in our savings. She has no idea about this account, and if I've done my job right, she never will. The video continued with Bill explaining the legal protections he'd established, but I was stuck on the realization that my husband had spent the final years of his life protecting me from our own daughter. And now Rebecca had stolen his wedding ring. the one thing that could lead her to this fortune. The video continued with Bill explaining investment strategies and legal protections, but I was paralyzed by the revelation that my own daughter had been planning to rob me. I paused the recording and sat in the darkness of our bedroom, trying to process 38 years of marriage through this new lens. How many times had Rebecca visited in the past 2 years, asking seemingly innocent questions about our finances? How many times had she helped me organize Bill's papers after the funeral, insisting I shouldn't handle such stressful tasks alone? I thought she was being caring. She'd been conducting reconnaissance. I resumed the video. Bill's face reappeared, looking directly at me with the serious expression he wore when explaining complex engineering problems. "I've documented everything, Ellie. Rebecca's debts, her fraudulent loan applications, her research into having you declared incompetent. I hired Victoria Cross, a private investigator, to build a comprehensive case. All the evidence is in my safe deposit box at First National Bank." Bill reached for something off camera and held up a small silver key. "Box 847. This key is taped inside my old toolbox in the garage, behind the socket wrench set. Victoria has copies of everything, and she's prepared to act if anything happens to me." I'd cleaned out that toolbox 3 times since Bill died, but I'd never thought to look behind the heavy metal drawers. My husband had been 3 steps ahead, even in death. "There's more, sweetheart. Rebecca hasn't been working alone." Bill's expression darkened. "Travis has been the mastermind. His construction company has been failing for 2 years, but instead of telling Rebecca, he's been using credit cards and taking out loans against equipment he doesn't own. They're facing bankruptcy, and they see your inheritance as their salvation." The pieces clicked into place. Travis's expensive watch, Rebecca's designer clothes, their lavish social media posts about restaurants and vacations. They'd been living on borrowed money, creating an illusion of success while planning to steal from an elderly widow. 6 months ago, I caught Travis photographing documents in my office. He claimed he was looking for the bathroom, but I found pictures of our bank statements on his phone when he asked me to help him with an app. That's when I knew for certain. I remembered that day. Travis had been acting nervous, and Bill had seemed unusually quiet afterward. I'd attributed it to normal family tension, never imagining my son-in-law was literally casing our house. The video shifted as Bill moved closer to the camera. "Ellie, I need you to understand something. Every dollar in that account is legally yours. I've made sure the inheritance laws are ironclad. But more importantly, I've set up protection that Rebecca and Travis can't break." Bill held up a thick manila folder. "If anyone tries to have you declared incompetent, if anyone contests my will, if anyone makes any legal move against you, Victoria has instructions to release everything. Rebecca's credit history, Travis's fraudulent loans, audio recordings of them discussing plans to deal with Mom's situation. It's all documented." Audio recordings. My blood ran cold. I had our house monitored for the past year, Ellie. Every conversation they had in our kitchen, every phone call they made while visiting. They talked about you like you were already dead, planning how to liquidate your assets and sell the house. I thought about all the times Rebecca and Travis had visited, speaking in hushed tones while I made coffee or prepared dinner. Every dismissive comment about my mental state, every calculation about the house's value, every cruel joke about putting Mom somewhere safe. Bill had heard it all. The video concluded with specific instructions about accessing the evidence and contacting Victoria Cross. As Bill's face faded from the screen, I sat alone with the knowledge that my husband had spent his final months building an unbreakable legal fortress around me. But he died before warning me about the threat. The only clue had been hidden in his wedding ring, the ring Rebecca had stolen and sold. My phone buzzed with a text from Rebecca. "Having the most amazing time in Bali. The resort is incredible. Hope you're doing well, Mom. Love you." The casual cruelty of it made my hands shake. She was posting pictures of infinity pools and five-star dinners while I sat alone, discovering that she'd been planning to rob me for years. The love you felt like mockery. I texted back, "Glad you're enjoying yourself. The weather here is lovely." What I didn't say was that I'd just discovered she'd inherited her father's strategic mind. She'd orchestrated the theft of his ring because she suspected it contained something valuable. But she'd made one crucial mistake. She'd underestimated the woman who'd been married to Bill Mitchell for 38 years. I opened Bill's toolbox in the garage at 5 a.m., my hands trembling as I felt behind the socket wrench set. The key was exactly where Bill said it would be, taped to the metal housing with electrical tape that had yellowed with age. By 6 a.m., I was sitting in the parking lot of First National Bank, waiting for them to open. By 7 a.m., I was staring at the contents of Safety Deposit Box 847, 3 thick folders labeled Rebecca Sterling Financial History, Travis Coleman, Fraud Documentation, and Audio Evidence, Kitchen Surveillance. The first folder contained credit reports, loan applications, and bank statements going back 3 years. Rebecca owed $247,000 across 15 different credit cards and personal loans. Travis's construction company was 4 months behind on equipment payments and had 3 liens filed against it. The second folder was worse. Travis had been listing fake income on loan applications, claiming his failing business generated $200,000 annually when it had actually lost money for 2 years. He'd also taken out equipment loans using serial numbers from machinery he'd sold months earlier. But the third folder made me sick. Page after page of transcribed conversations between Rebecca and Travis, discussing my deteriorating mental state, the value of my house, and the fastest way to gain control of my assets. They'd calculated everything: nursing home costs, legal fees for competency hearings, even real estate commissions for selling my home. In one conversation from just 2 months before Bill died, Travis had said, "Once the old man's gone, it'll be easy. Eleanor's already showing signs of confusion. A few more months of isolation, maybe some medication mix-ups, and any judge will see she needs supervised care." They hadn't just been planning to steal from me. They'd been planning to destroy my independence, my dignity, my life. But Bill had been listening, and now it was time to use his gift to me. Not just the money, but the power to choose how this story ended. 3 days after discovering Bill's evidence, my doorbell rang at 7 a.m. Through the peephole, I saw Rebecca and Travis standing on my porch, looking travel-worn and agitated. They were supposed to be in Bali for another week. I opened the door but didn't invite them in. "You're back early." "We need to talk," Rebecca said, pushing past me into the hallway. Her usual polished appearance was gone. Hair unwashed, designer clothes wrinkled, dark circles under her eyes. Travis followed, clutching his phone like a lifeline. "About what?" I asked, though I already knew. "About Dad's message," Travis said bluntly. "The one you found in his ring." Rebecca shot him a sharp look. "What Travis means is, we're concerned about you handling Dad's financial affairs alone. Maybe we should look at that message together." I studied their faces. The fake concern, the barely contained desperation. "Why did you cut your vacation short?" "Mom, you sounded confused on the phone," Rebecca said, her voice taking on that patronizing tone I'd grown to hate. "We were worried about you making financial decisions while you're still grieving." Confused? I sat down in Bill's favorite chair, making them stand. "I seemed confused when I told you your father left me a coded message?" Travis stepped forward, his construction worker's hands clenched into fists. "Look, Eleanor, we know you found something valuable. The jeweler called us." My blood chilled. "Nathan Harper called you?" "We left our number in case anything came up about the ring," Rebecca said quickly. "He mentioned someone was asking questions about hidden compartments and secret messages. We got worried. They'd been monitoring the situation from Bali, tracking my investigation from thousands of miles away. But Nathan hadn't called them. They'd called Nathan, probably multiple times, checking to see if I'd discovered anything. "So you flew back from your dream vacation because you thought I found something worth money," I said quietly. "That's not," Rebecca started. "That's exactly what happened," I interrupted. "Your father's been dead 8 months, and this is the first time either of you has shown interest in anything he left behind. Until you thought there might be money involved." Travis's mask slipped completely. "We know about the offshore account, Eleanor." Rebecca grabbed his arm, but it was too late. The truth was out. "What offshore account?" I asked, though my heart was racing. "The one your husband mentioned in his will," Travis said, ignoring Rebecca's frantic signals. "We know he had money hidden somewhere. The ring was supposed to tell us where." I stood up slowly, using my full height to look down at them. "You read Bill's will?" "We have a right to know what we're inheriting," Rebecca said defensively. "You're inheriting nothing," I said calmly. "Bill left everything to me." The silence that followed was loaded with rage and desperation. Rebecca's careful facade cracked completely. "That's not fair," she hissed. "We're his family too. We deserve security." "Security?" I almost laughed. "Like the security you were planning to give me in a nursing home?" Both their faces went white. Travis took a step back. "I don't know what you're talking about," Rebecca whispered. I walked to Bill's desk and pulled out one of the transcribed conversations. "Would you like me to read your exact words about my deteriorating mental state? Or perhaps the part where Travis calculated nursing home costs?" Rebecca collapsed into a chair, all pretense gone. Travis stared at the papers in my hands like they were poisonous snakes. "How?" Rebecca asked. "Your father was smarter than both of you combined," I said. "He knew what you were planning, and he protected me from his own daughter." Travis found his voice first. "We need that money, Eleanor. My business is failing. We're facing bankruptcy." "So you decided to steal from an elderly widow?" "We weren't stealing," Rebecca said desperately. "We were going to take care of you. The nursing facility we researched has excellent care. While you liquidated my assets and sold my home." The doorbell rang, interrupting the confrontation. Through the window, I saw 2 people in expensive suits carrying briefcases. "Are you expecting someone?" Rebecca asked nervously. I smiled for the first time in days. "Actually, yes." I opened the door to a woman in her 40s with steel gray eyes and a man who looked like he'd stepped out of a law school brochure. "Mrs. Mitchell? I'm Victoria Cross, private investigator. This is David Chen from Chen and Associates Legal. Your husband asked us to visit if certain circumstances arose." Rebecca and Travis looked like they'd seen ghosts. Victoria stepped into the hallway, her gaze taking in Rebecca and Travis with professional assessment. "Mr. Mitchell hired me 18 months ago to document fraudulent financial activities and elder abuse planning. I believe you know why I'm here." David opened his briefcase and pulled out a thick folder. "Mrs. Mitchell, we have restraining orders, fraud charges, and evidence of conspiracy to commit elder abuse. These documents need to be served immediately." Rebecca found her voice. "You can't prove anything." Victoria smiled coldly. "Voice recordings, financial documents, browser history, and surveillance footage. We can prove everything." Travis grabbed Rebecca's arm. "We need to leave. Now." "Actually," David said, stepping between them and the door, "you need to stay. The FBI is en route to discuss federal wire fraud charges related to Mr. Coleman's loan applications." As if on cue, 3 black SUVs pulled up outside my house. Men in FBI windbreakers began walking up my driveway. Rebecca turned to me with tears in her eyes. "Mom, please. We never meant for it to go this far." I looked at my daughter, the child I'd raised, the woman who'd planned to destroy my life for money, and felt nothing but profound sadness. "Yes, you did," I said quietly. "Your father knew exactly how far you'd go. That's why he spent his final months protecting me from you." The FBI agents knocked on my door, and I invited them in. As they began reading Rebecca and Travis their rights, I thought about Bill's final video message. "The choice is yours, my love." It always has been. I'd made my choice. The next 3 hours transformed my quiet Portland home into the center of a federal investigation. FBI agents carried boxes of evidence from Rebecca and Travis's rental car, while Victoria Cross methodically presented 18 months of surveillance data to the lead investigator. I sat in my kitchen, watching through the window as my daughter and son-in-law were placed in separate vehicles. Rebecca was crying, her designer vacation clothes now wrinkled and stained with tears. Travis stared straight ahead, his jaw clenched in defeat. Agent Martinez, a woman in her 50s with kind eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor, sat across from me at my kitchen table. "Mrs. Mitchell, I need to walk you through what we've found." She opened a tablet and showed me financial records that made my stomach turn. "Your daughter and Mr. Coleman owe a combined $340,000 to various creditors. Mr. Coleman's construction company has been operating fraudulently for over 2 years, using false income statements to secure equipment loans." "But that's not the most serious charge," Agent Martinez continued. "They've been planning what we call inheritance theft through competency fraud. The evidence your husband gathered shows premeditated elder abuse." She scrolled through more documents. They researched guardianship laws, nursing home costs, and power of attorney procedures. We found browser histories, printed articles, even contact information for lawyers who specialize in competency hearings. Victoria Cross joined us at the table, carrying her own folder of evidence. "Mrs. Mitchell, your husband was incredibly thorough. He documented every step of their plan, including conversations where they discussed timing your husband's death with their financial needs." My blood ran cold. "What do you mean, timing his death?" Victoria's expression grew grim. "We found text messages between Rebecca and Travis from 6 months before your husband passed. They were discussing how much longer they could wait before Mom becomes a problem. They were running out of time financially." Agent Martinez leaned forward. "Mrs. Mitchell, we need to ask you directly. Do you have any reason to believe your husband's death wasn't natural?" The question hit me like a physical blow. Bill had died of a heart attack at work, sudden and unexpected. The doctor said it was massive, that he wouldn't have suffered. But now, thinking about the stress he'd been under, the knowledge that his own daughter was planning to rob his wife, "He was under enormous pressure," I whispered. "He'd been working late, seemed anxious all the time." I thought it was just work stress. "We're not suggesting foul play," Agent Martinez said carefully. "But the stress of knowing your child is planning to commit elder abuse against your spouse could certainly contribute to heart problems." Victoria opened her folder. "Your husband left specific instructions about what should happen if Rebecca and Travis were arrested. He wanted you to understand the full scope of their activities." She handed me a letter in Bill's handwriting, dated just 3 weeks before his death. "My dearest Ellie, if you're reading this, then Rebecca has shown her true nature, and the authorities are involved. I need you to know that everything I did was to protect you, but also to give you choices. The offshore account contains $2.8 million, all legally yours. But more importantly, you now have the power to decide how this ends. You can choose mercy, pay their debts, give them a fresh start, hope they've learned from their mistakes. Or you can choose justice. Let them face the full consequences of planning to steal from an elderly widow. I couldn't make that choice for you. It has to be yours." I set the letter down with shaking hands. Even from beyond the grave, Bill was protecting me while giving me agency over my own life. Agent Martinez continued her briefing. They'll be charged with conspiracy to commit elder abuse, wire fraud for the false loan applications, and attempting to unlawfully access protected financial accounts. With the evidence we have, they're looking at federal prison time. How long? I asked quietly. Minimum 2 years each, possibly 5, depending on how many charges stick. I thought about Rebecca as a little girl, excited about her first day of school. Then I thought about the transcribed conversations where she'd calculated how much my death would be worth to her. Mrs. Mitchell, Victoria said gently, there's something else you should know. The man who bought your husband's ring from the jewelry store, we believe he was working with Rebecca and Travis. What do you mean? Nathan Harper, the jeweler, confirmed that the buyer seemed to know exactly what he was looking for. We think Rebecca told someone about the hidden compartment, possibly a contact from Travis's gambling circles. The pieces clicked together. Rebecca had stolen the ring not just for vacation money, but because she suspected it contained something valuable. When the jewelry store found the hidden compartment, she'd panicked and sent someone to buy it before I could retrieve it. Do you know who has the ring now? Victoria smiled. Actually, yes. The FBI recovered it this morning. The buyer was a private investigator Rebecca hired to track your financial activities. He's been arrested for conspiracy. She handed me a small evidence bag containing Bill's wedding ring. Through the plastic, I could see the white gold band that had been on my husband's finger for 38 years. We'll need to hold it as evidence during the trial, Victoria explained, but it will be returned to you. Agent Martinez closed her tablet. Mrs. Mitchell, you'll need to testify at their trial. Are you prepared for that? I looked around my kitchen, at the photos of Bill and me that still covered the refrigerator, at the coffee mug he'd used every morning. For 8 months, I'd been living in the past, paralyzed by grief. But Bill's final gift wasn't just money. It was the power to choose my future. Agent Martinez, I want them prosecuted to the full extent of the law. She nodded approvingly. We'll be in touch about the court proceedings. As the FBI and Victoria Cross packed up their evidence, I sat alone in my kitchen for the first time in hours. The house felt different. Not empty, but peaceful. The weight of secrets and threats had been lifted. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Mrs. Mitchell, this is Logan, Rebecca's son. I heard what happened. I'm so sorry. Can we talk? My grandson. In all the chaos of Rebecca's betrayal, I'd forgotten about Logan, now 25, and working as a teacher in Seattle. Rebecca had cut me off from the grandchildren along with everyone else, claiming I was becoming difficult. I texted back, I'd love to hear from you. Within minutes, my phone rang. Grandma Ellie? I've been trying to reach you for months, but Mom said you didn't want to talk to family. Another lie. Another manipulation. But this one had a different ending. I've been waiting to hear from you, sweetheart. I've missed you so much. 6 months later, I stood in the lobby of Oregon Health and Science University Hospital, watching workers install a brass plaque that read, "The William Mitchell Memorial Children's Wing," funded by Eleanor Mitchell. Bill's offshore account had been more than enough to secure my future and fund the pediatric expansion he'd always talked about supporting. The final irony wasn't lost on me. Rebecca's attempt to steal from me had directly resulted in the largest charitable donation in the hospital's history, funding exactly the cause Bill had cared about most. My phone buzzed with a text from Victoria Cross. Rebecca sentenced to 3 years federal prison. Travis got 4 years plus restitution. Appeals denied. It's over. I typed back, "Thank you for everything." And it was over. The legal proceedings had taken months, but every piece of evidence Bill had gathered held up in court. Rebecca and Travis had tried to claim they were only trying to help me, But 18 months of recorded conversations about liquidating my assets told a different story. The hardest part hadn't been testifying against my own daughter. It had been listening to the audio recordings Bill had made, hearing Rebecca and Travis discuss my death like a business opportunity, calculating how much they'd inherit and how quickly they could access it. But that chapter of my life was closed. At 71, I was finally living the life Bill had protected for me. I'd sold our big house in Hawthorne and bought a smaller place near the waterfront, with large windows overlooking the Willamette River. For the first time in decades, I was making decisions based on what I wanted, not what my family expected or what our budget could handle. My phone rang as I walked back to my car. Logan's name appeared on the screen. "Grandma Ellie, I just got off work. Are we still on for dinner tonight?" Logan had become a constant in my life over the past 6 months. After learning about his mother's crimes, he'd driven down from Seattle immediately, spending 3 days helping me process everything that had happened. Unlike Rebecca, he'd inherited Bill's moral compass along with his thoughtful nature. "Absolutely. I made reservations at that new seafood place you mentioned." "I have news," Logan said, excitement in his voice. "Sarah said yes." Sarah was Logan's girlfriend of 2 years, a nurse at Seattle Children's Hospital who'd won my heart the first time we met. Their engagement felt like the beginning of something beautiful after months of endings and legal battles. "Logan, that's wonderful. Have you set a date?" "We were hoping for next spring." "And Grandma, we'd like you to walk me down the aisle. I know it's usually the bride's family, but you're the only parent figure I want there." Tears pricked my eyes. Rebecca would be in federal prison during her son's wedding, missing one of the most important days of his life because she'd chosen greed over family. I would be honored. After we hung up, I sat in my car overlooking the river, thinking about the choices that had brought me to this moment. Bill's final letter had been right. I'd had the power to choose mercy or justice. I'd chosen justice, and while it had been painful, it had also been liberating. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Mrs. Mitchell, this is Rebecca. I know I have no right to contact you, but I wanted you to know I'm getting help in here. Therapy, financial counseling, addiction treatment. I know I can never undo what I did, but I'm trying to understand how I became someone who could plan to hurt her own mother." I stared at the message for a long time. Part of me wanted to delete it, to maintain the clean break I'd made from that chapter of my life. But another part of me, the part that had raised Rebecca, that had loved her for 43 years before discovering her betrayal, felt something that might have been hope. I typed back, "I'm glad you're getting help. Focus on becoming someone Logan can be proud of when you get out." I didn't say I forgave her. I didn't say we could rebuild our relationship. But I left the door open for the possibility that someday, the daughter I'd raised might find her way back to the values Bill and I had tried to teach her. That evening, Logan and I sat at a waterfront restaurant, planning his wedding and talking about his students. He taught 5th grade in a low-income Seattle neighborhood, and his stories about helping kids overcome difficult circumstances reminded me so much of Bill's quiet generosity. "Grandma, can I ask you something?" Logan said as we shared dessert. "Anything. How do you forgive someone who betrayed you that completely?" "I'm struggling with anger at Mom, and I don't want to carry that forever." I thought about Bill's wedding ring, now safely back on my jewelry box, and the secret it had protected for nearly 40 years. "Your grandfather spent his final months protecting me from your mother's choices. But he also protected her from the immediate consequences until she was ready to face them." "What do you mean?" "He could have had her arrested for elder abuse planning before she actually did anything. Instead, he built a legal fortress around me and waited to see what choice she'd make. He gave her every opportunity to change course." Logan nodded thoughtfully. "But she didn't." "No, she didn't. And that's not my fault, or yours. or even your grandfather's. People make their own choices, and they live with the consequences. I reached across the table and squeezed his hand. Your job isn't to forgive her for my sake. It's to decide what kind of man you want to be, regardless of what kind of mother she became. As we walked along the waterfront after dinner, I thought about the different ways love can protect someone. Bill had protected me with planning and evidence and legal documentation. But he'd also protected me by giving me the tools to choose my own path forward. The greatest love stories aren't about passion or romance. They're about building something together that can withstand any threat, even threats from within your own family. Bill and I had built a partnership strong enough that even his death couldn't break it. He'd continued protecting me from beyond the grave, ensuring that our love story wouldn't end with betrayal and loss. Some people spend their whole lives looking for that kind of love. I was lucky enough to carry it with me for 38 years, hidden in plain sight on my husband's ring finger. Later that night, I sat on my new back porch overlooking the river, Bill's wedding ring in my hands. The inscription was still there. Forever and always, E+B, 1985. The hidden compartment was empty now, its secret revealed and its purpose fulfilled. But the ring itself remained what it had always been, a symbol of promises kept, protection given, and love that transcends even death. Thanks for listening to my story. Don't forget to subscribe and let me know in the comments where you're watching from. And remember, sometimes the people who love you most are the ones fighting battles you don't even know exist. Your voice matters, and so does your story.